Good morning, everybody. This is Megan from Holistic Care Medicine, and today's video is titled The First Brain, and we're talking about the mind and the brain and the body connection based on the book Grow a New Body by Dr. Alberto Villado. And it's titled, chapter 3 is titled Dethroning the Tyrant King, and it's talking a lot about the mind and how what we feed the mind is what is going to be the way that we're going to be. So if you're feeding it bad things, you're going to feel terrible. So you're not really going to be in a place of peace and happiness, and you're not going to be in a place of health. A couple of the things that I wanted to share that he states that I really liked is that the truth is that we cannot really change our minds without changing our brains. And that is so important to understand, that your mind is not your brain. And he says to know that the mind is mad. And the mind is mad based on, what we feed it. If we feed it anger and nastiness, it's not going to be a place of sunshines and rainbows in a sense. And then the mind actually plays a part on how your brain functions, which plays a part on how your body functions. One of the things that I talk a lot about in my practice is about the heart, the mind, body, spirit connection. And your mind and your spirit plays a part, your body and your mind plays a part, your spirit and your body, your spirit and your mind, they all are interconnected in their own different dimensions and different ways. He says the mind-body connection has long been acknowledged as a factor in wellness as well as illness. So if the mind is not healthy, the body will not be healthy. And he says the more you clear your mind, the more that you take care of yourself, the better you will become a tool to have a relationship between the spirit and the invisible world. Meaning it's another way of being able to tap into the innate wisdom that you have on how to help yourself and get better. Okay? A couple things I want to share is that he goes on in the book and talks a lot about fear of death and our lambic brain and the neural pathways in our brain, and how they play a part in our perception of things and our understanding of things. And what we have found is that, and he's found, is that the fear of death is a really, really big thing for a lot of people. And based on your perception and your belief of what it's going to be, is going to change how you live your life, So he says here, in one of his visits with a group in the Amazon, he says they the Quetzalcoatl, I'm sorry for pronouncing that wrong, but that group of indigenous people teaches that mortal existence is brief, and we have to cherish it and protect it, as it is extremely difficult to earn a physical body. Survival in the wilderness was a natural outcome of respectful interaction with nature. And that being said, in his journey, he noticed there were two distinctive categories of plant medicine. And the reason why I'm stressing this is because based on what we understand, that having a plant-based, it doesn't have to be totally vegetarian or totally vegan, but a primarily plant-based lifestyle is healthier for the mind and the body than eating a lot of carbs and protein. So he said there's two distinct categories of plant medicine. The first is using it for specific ailments. So, for example, like when people have headaches, migraines, we use peppermint oil on the temple area to help. If there is like an infection, I love having like thieves or lavender being diffused as essential oil into the air. I know a lot of people with liver issues like to drink dandelion tea or nettle tea. So they're herbs and plants and oils that are used naturally for a specific ailment. He also says the other category is that plants helps to create health. And you can grow a new body by turning on the longevity genes inside every cell, by detoxifying the brain, and by switching on the natural production of pluripotent stem cells. Okay? And eating specific types of plants based on their medicine helps us switch on the circuitry that overrides that tyrannical mind. So being able to eat things that are light and nutritious will actually decalcify and release some of the toxicity to be able to have it feel light and clear, which is what we want. He says, with a diet based on wheat, barley, rice, and maize, grains with a high glycemic index or blood glucose elevating potential, our farming ancestors were essentially living off sugars or living on sugars. Our bodies and brains are still suffering the health consequences of this dietary shift. A brain steeped in sugar is sluggish and dull. And most of us know that based on, what we're eating. Pasta, bread, pastries, even, the agave. It's not that really good for you. We think we're doing really good, but we're really not. So the second part is he talks about in the mind and the brain is the fear. Our mind is what holds the fear. And he says when the mind is behaving tyrannically, it's running ancient programs belonging to the limbic brain that focus on survival, and the primary emotion is fear. When we're in its grip, we see danger everywhere. Okay, the programs of the limbic brain are known as the 4 F's: feeding, fighting, fear, and fornication. So when you're in fear, a lot of the times the brain is craving sweet foods because you're feeling sad or insecure. Feed it sugar and this brain keeps operating in a dull level of awareness that does not lead to an experience of oneness. So you're just basically getting up and going to work and doing what you have to do. You're really not enjoying life and believing that there's a good thing happening or being in that positive or feeling healthy. You're just like suffering through it, and that's not the way you need to be. He says when we cut off its simple supply of sugars, so when we stop eating the sugar, its instincts can be overridden by the neurocortex, the new brain. And the neurocortex is programmed for beauty. The new brain needs ketones to override the programs of the more ancient limbic brain. Okay? And I know that I did the video for intermittent fasting, and one of the things he talks about is intermittent fasting because it really helps your body to produce those ketones because you're burning off the things that you don't need. It also says that when your brain becomes overstimulated, it hijacks the entire neural apparatus, restricting blood flow to the frontal lobes of the brain so we can no longer come up with creative solutions to problems. So the more you're eating your sugar and your carbs, the less you're able to tap into, the third eye is here, or even being able to use the brain to be creative and think, because it's not clear, it's heavy and dull. And he says the opposite is true. You can light up your brain, and that has to do with what you're putting into your body. A couple of things he talks about is traumas and how that plays a part in the structure of your brain. And he talks about neuroplasticity. So say you live in a traumatic, you've had a traumatic childhood. There are things that you experienced that I want to say you shouldn't have as a child, either being abused, physical, mental, emotional. There are parts of your brain that become distorted. And there's a part of your mind where your perception is distorted, based not so much distorted in your reality, but distorted in the belief that it could be better, especially as a kid, because you don't know the difference. That's all you grew up knowing. So He says that psychological themes run in families passed down from parent to child. So you could be carrying your parents' traumas. In the Amazon, they call this a generational curse. It can trigger heart disease or cancer. Autoimmune diseases, which involve the immune system attacking its own cells, often run in families with poor emotional boundaries. Family members have trouble acknowledging what is yours and what is mine. He also goes on to say the poison in our food and water are stored in fat cells, and the brain is largely made up of fat, and that's really important to know, that the brain is largely made up of fat. He talks a lot more about neuroplasticity and how our brains affect the functions and structures, and it's actually a relatively new thing in modern medicine as to how that is. So the things I want you to take away from this video is that the first, brain and the mind and brain are two different things. Your mind is your perception of things. Your mind is the 4 fours that you want to fight, and you're in fear, and you want to feed, and fornication was the other one. But right now we're talking about the fear and the fighting and the feeding, and that we are able to help our mind change by what we're putting into our mouth to be able to help the brain function better, so that we're not dull and we're not foggy. And what is important is changing what you're putting into your mouth. So there's a very important connection between our mind and plants. And having a plant-based diet, I'm not saying the whole, and I don't like the word diet, lifestyle. So the whole purpose is for you to understand that you don't need to become a vegetarian or a vegan, but you do need to start eating a variety of vegetables in order to have the fight of nutrients that you need to be able to clear, detoxify parts of the brain that's going to help you create that oneness with yourself, so that you can grow. And by shedding off some of the things and getting a new perspective on things and a new awareness is going to give you a new outlook. And when you're not feeling really great and you start incorporating, and it takes time, going natural is not easy. So taking your time and eating healthy and being aware of the changes that's happening is going to motivate you to make different changes to continue on your health, because it is a journey. And your mind is going to change. When you're not always kind of feeling achy and dull and fatigued and tired, and you have energy and you feel lighter, you're going to want to do more. So it's going to help you grow. So today this chapter is about dethroning the Tyrant King, and the Tyrant King is that mind and that mindset that we have because we're feeding it the wrong things. And we know that sugar is not good for the mind. I'm not saying you need to cut it up all the way out of your life. That's very hard to do nowadays, but become more aware of how much of it you're putting in. Okay? And understanding that there's a mind and body connection, and that mind is the oneness with yourself. And if you're not connected, you're not feeling good. You're not able to change your body at a cellular level if you're not understanding what's going on the other. So many that's what I've been learning. So I don't want to keep you more. Thank you for your time, and I wish you all well.